Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing 5 older, really old, short films that you should watch if you're a movie fan, if you love movie history, and you obviously, if you haven't seen it, you really should just click on YouTube for the 2 or 3 seconds long Roundhay Garden scene, all the way back to 1888. As of now, this is the oldest known video that we have of film. Like, this is it. It's just a few people walking in circles in 1888. And I've watched this many times, just this little segment over and over again, because I'm so fascinated that this exists from that long ago, okay? And I was preparing for this video looking for some of these older, films, and I ran across something else that's almost as old. It's 1894. This was made in Edison Studios, so I mean, this is old stuff. And it has to do with Buffalo Bill and his Wild West show. There is actually a film called Annie Oakley, and it's a 30-second clip or so. It's about 30 seconds. Okay, less than that, actually. I think it's closer to 20-some. And she just does sharpshooting. Like, she just shoots objects, some in the air, whatever. And it's fascinating to watch actual Annie Oakley shoot for that length of time, because it ends up feeling a little bit longer. And you're watching that piece of history from 1894. And if you're like me or a Western fan watching that, you're like, I did not know that we had that, okay? So like in prep for just trying to find these old clips and stuff, I was really like almost awe-inspired that even existed. And just kind of as an aside here, most of this stuff, I mean, you can find Library of Congress clips or whatever. It's in the public domain, so it's not like it's difficult to find any of this, and you can just watch it on your iPhone. You know, it's kind of neat to look stuff like this up. And from the Edison studio, there's a whole like long list you can go through of different neat stuff. I believe one of those, there was like a Golden Gate Bridge train, piece of train footage. And you're like looking right over the edge of the train. It's crazy. There's like so much motion sickness going on in this short little clip. So you should look up the Edison studio videos, but that's my favorite being a Western fan. And something that is pretty foundational. Now, if you enjoy the movie Goodfellas, okay, and you enjoy the end of that movie, the very last frame or shot in the movie is inspired in part by the Great Train Robbery. So, the Great Train Robbery, it's about 12 minutes. The plot is simple. There's a hijacking situation with a train, and the train clerk is like all tied up and everything, and then the law has to come in and save the day. This whole sequence may speak to you if you're a fan of one of the Red Dead Redemption games, okay? Because I watched this and I was like, they took out, like, Red Dead did the thing with the Great Train Robbery. So that might be something fun for you too if you're into that particular game, which if you watch the Western content in my channel, I would guess at least some of you are. And one of the most well-known of these old, old 1900s, 1902 movie is heavily mentioned and used in the film Hugo, also by Scorsese. You can even see, if you have the Arrow edition of Hugo, you can actually see the film I'm getting ready to talk about right here. It's called A Trip to the Moon, okay? And I've actually shown A Trip to the Moon to students before. I showed it to a film club one year. And it's so polarizing because half of them would look at it and they're like, I can't believe how like interesting that is. And then half of them just like, they just don't get into it at all. So it may not be your kind of thing, but it's basically like this. It's about a 15-minute long clip, or movie rather. And this group follows a professor on a trip to the moon, and they get in a little spaceship and there's a little celebration. They leave and they go and they fight like aliens and come back. And that's the film. And it's really imaginative and fun. And like I said in the movie Hugo, it kind of uses that as a big part of its plot. So I feel like, if you've gone down the Scorsese rabbit hole already, it's just kind of a natural place you'll end up. And along those lines, another one that he had talked about that I watched recently was The Musketeers of Pig Alley. Okay, this is a 1912 film. I don't think it's the actual like first gangster film per se, but it was directed by D.W. Griffith, and kind of is like the unofficial start of the gangster film, and it does follow this little interaction that happens with this couple who kind of ends up involved in the mob in some ways. There's a fun little shootout where one group of gangsters kind of comes through to an alley, and they're like some other gangsters hiding behind barrels and stuff, and then some cops come in. It's a good shootout scene. If you watch it, you might be surprised how alive everything feels. You can really feel the narrative come into its own in those few minutes of filmmaking. And we talk about people like Scorsese who do these gangster films. Like, you can see some influence even way back then, okay, in those early films. And this one doesn't feel, to me, quite like a 1912 might. It feels a little bit older than that, more like 30s. So it's a fun little watch. Like I said, I think it's about 16 minutes. I enjoyed it. All 4 of these, or 5 of these, I really enjoyed. I guess Roundhay Garden scene isn't quite a film. It's just like it's like a TikTok clip from the old times. Just kidding. It's more foundational than that. But I do think that going through and looking at some of these older pieces of filmmaking history in something like the Library of Congress, or if you can find good prints on YouTube or wherever, is really worth your time. Some things can surprise you that we still actually have remnants of on film, or pieces of lost films. All that kind of stuff's interesting. So if there are any little snippets or segments or anything related to this that you wanted to talk about in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. If you have any affinity for any of these, that would be a good time to do that as well. If you enjoy the content here, if you wouldn't mind clicking that like button, it does help to grow the channel, as do your comments and your subscriptions. Those are all very, very helpful as I grow this thing and share my love of film with you. So we'll see you next time on Cody and the Cinema.